Okay. So I'm James. I'm co-founder and CTO at Source. Today I'm just going to be sharing the journey we went through to get to ClickHouse and run multi-vector search at scale. So what Source is we sort of exist to give companies proximity to their customer pain. Now, customer pain can exist in like different forms. So, classic one is like user metrics, where people, do certain actions. Another type is, just natural language, like explaining something. So, does anyone here drive a car that they like? I'm assuming, yeah, there's a few hands. There's also these people who don't. I'm not going to drop names of what car this was, but there's feedback like this where people tell you about a product that can have information about why they did or didn't like it. And in this case, it's negative, but it's really hard to understand why. They don't really share why is it a rubbish car, why is the company dreadful, and why wouldn't they recommend it? So this kind of contributes to this really hard problem of dissecting information from customer feedback data and really understanding like what are actual pain points that people are experiencing. So there's kind of two areas of complexity here. One is content. So content in customer feedback is just most of the time very ambiguous. People say different things in different ways. So phrasing could be different, but they mean the same thing. It could also just be language that you don't really understand. For example, people could talk about particular products naming convention, and it's just a contextual gap where you don't know. There could be acronyms that are like understood by the person who's saying it, but maybe not by a system that's looking at it. There's also structure. Like these types of data points exist in many different systems, so they all have their own structures, as well as the actual type of data that you get back. So company surveys, like survey campaigns versus like the kind of data that you see on social media platforms, which is usually short form and may not have a great degree of detail. So there's other complexities here which is around the structure of the data too. So this is an animation of it's an animation of a clustering mechanism. So it's like finding a needle. So if you want to find customer pain, you got to essentially find a needle in this like haystack of unstructured data. So there it goes. This is an algorithm called quad tree processing. If you have done anything in sort of game engines where you're talking about like ray tracing or hit detection, that kind of stuff, will sometimes use this kind of algorithm. And what you're seeing here is this cluster of data being processed into quadrants. Now it's a hierarchical structure, just like a tree, but every child has like 4 children, exactly 4 children. What this kind of gets you is regions of density. So the further down the tree you go, the more dense are the regions. So in sort of vector space, you could map that to, say, similar types of things being said or similar phrases. So those red dots are showing, areas of very similar, densely populated areas of the tree. If you want to learn more about this, there's a really cool project called WizMap where they do this over, huge amounts of data, like 100 million data points to find dense regions. And what this looks like in Source is this pipeline where it's data coming in, you transform it, and then you want to filter and then cluster. Now, the point of this is to get to things that are digestible from a user, but not digestible in the form that's coming in. So you can see a lot of data points coming in, we transform them, then you filter them, and then cluster those. So transforming, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that. People could refer it to as a ChatGPT wrapper. But essentially, it's kind of like an ETL that is driven by AI, and filtering and clustering is really where a lot of the complexity lies. So this is an example data set. This is a very small data set, one of our data sets that is basically mapped into a 2D visual using, I think it was a UMap, where we reduced dimensions of vectors down into just 2 dimensions. And that way you can do clustering over the top of it using quad tree. So filtering and clustering for these types of data is made up of, well, there's a lot of different parts to it. For filtering, there's a mixture of vector searching, fuzzy matching, and attribute filtering. So you kind of need all these things to actually find all the relevant data points if you're searching for something. And clustering is similar, but it also inherits a lot of the complexity with filtering because some of the clustering mechanisms use similar algorithms. What this kind of means is that you get these big, scary queries. Just massive queries. So how do we solve this problem? So the first attempt to actually implement this is we used a vector database called Quadrant and combined it with our Postgres database. Now, the reason we did this is because Quadrant had a feature which allows you to do positive and negative filtering on vectors, which didn't exist in any other vector database. And it kind of looks like this, where you have something you're looking for, which is the purple, and it's got this radius, which is like a similarity, like inclusion similarity to that vector. But you want to exclude everything that's in the red zone so that the resulting filter set doesn't include those two that are overlapping. This kind of did work, like it actually worked. This was our simple architecture. But yeah, Quadrant, when you run Quadrant and you want to join it with your Postgres data, we used Postgres for attribute filtering and we used Quadrant for vector filtering. And what this meant is you need to join those two result sets. So we had to buy a bigger elephant, and we bought a big elephant until it looked like this. And yeah, this is we call this a self-inflicted denial of wallet. So we realized we can't do that. So so the second attempt was, why not just use Postgres for everything? I'm sure you guys have heard this before. It's a pretty common mantra in startups is just, use Postgres. And so we did. And the reason why we didn't do this initially was because HNSW indexes at the time weren't available, meaning that the vector searches we could do on our Postgres instance, just like, it wasn't really feasible to do at that point from a performance lens. So we did this, and we saw our average query times drop pretty considerably. It was about roughly 5x. I think it's actually more than 5x, because the top end of this one is just, it would just time out. So it's higher than that. But yeah, it still wasn't really good enough. It doesn't make sense for a user to query in your platform and wait 20 seconds to get a result. So we had to look for something else, and we landed on columnar databases. These are essentially analytical queries, and so it made sense to have an analytics database. So first attempt was kind of an experiment. We used DuckDB, it's another columnar database, I believe open source, and we set it up with our system. We had full replication on an hourly schedule, and it worked. It did work. Performance was great. So these are, not rows of complexity, these are columns of complexity. And it wasn't really done there, because we need people to search over their sets of data in real time. But also, there's all these other problems that you get when you go to production with something. The DuckDB experiment didn't really solve those problems. So talking about replication, scaling, and observability. So could we actually replicate that didn't have to wait an hour every single time? And could we even scale this thing? And could we actually observe it in ways that, if something went wrong, can we actually find out what went wrong? So first of all, replication. we looked at a few different use cases. So we could have gone with DuckDB and implemented something like PeerDB, or we could have also onboarded even more complexity and gone with Kafka and Debezium, or you could just go to ClickHouse. And so keeping it simple, like we just went to ClickHouse. At least that's with replication. It was pretty obvious. So the scaling problem, taking those same considerations, you pretty much there's complexity in scaling these things. If you go with other columnar solutions, when we looked at ClickHouse, it was essentially like one-click scaling. Kevin's over there. Kevin calls it ClickOps. I thought that was hilarious. And then when you look at observability, the same ones, you basically have to bring your own. With ClickHouse, you get dashboard, and now in the introduction of ClickStack and things like that, there's even more options. So we went to ClickHouse, and then this is to scale, by the way. And then if you can't see that at the back, that's Postgres and ClickHouse. So we removed that thing. And so what we saw is, roughly 100x speed improvement on large queries. So we went from, almost nearing 100 seconds of query time for large data sets to effectively sub-second times. So here's a real quick, not live demo of a real data set that's using multi-vector queries with the exclusions. So it's roughly, this set is around about 380,000, but they're using exclusions on agent as a vector search and table, like positive on table. And it's I don't know if you call it that, but the number changes pretty quickly. So what's next for us? There is another problem in the sort of customer feedback data collection, and you have to rely on your users to essentially give you something, which is not really a great thing to rely on. So what we're exploring now is we're exploring CUAs, automating data collection and going through applications and then submitting that feedback. That way you have sort of reliable feedback coming in. There's no weird, ambiguous language being used. And you kind of solve a lot of the problems we saw earlier with why is this actually really hard? So if you want to try it out, we're not cool enough to have a .ai domain. But you can try it here, on your own sets of data if you, want to find out any of these kinds of things. Awesome, that's it.